Hello, and welcome to the Atlantic Screen Connection podcast with Jason and Lee. I'm Jason.
I'm Lee.
And this week on the show, we are talking about the global hit.
Blockbuster success.
Yes, that's right. F. Gary Gray's The Fate of the Furious, starring Vincent Diesel.
Vincent.
Charlize Theron, who was in the movie Hancock with Willard Smith. And there's also Dwayne Johnson, who was in The Tooth Fairy, if I recall. Tyrese Gibson, who is also in the famous vehicles that transform. The Transformers.
Oh, yes. The Transformers.
Directed by the stellar Michael Bay.
And Ludacris, of course. Famous Renaissance man, Ludacris. Musician, actor, writer, rhapsode.
Okay,
yes.
There you go. And the other, Michelle Rodriguez from Girl Fight. So, yes, Lee, before we get into the summary of the film, which Lee will read a little bit later, I want to know how my co-host is doing. How are you doing, Lee?
Well, if I were to say in a single word how my week has been, I'd say opulent. Yourself, Jason?
I am in a splendid mood today. It is gray here in Quebec City. It's rainy, just the kind of temperature that is perfect for talking about Fate of the Furious.
Of course.
So, could you give us a rundown, a summary of the Fate of the Furious, Lee, before we actually get into what we really want to talk about today?
Certainly. I'm just going to take this from the seminal information database that is IMDb. When a mysterious woman seduces Dom into the world of terrorism and a betrayal of those closest to him, the crew, the family, if you will, face trials that will test them as never before. I think that says it all, really.
That really gets to the point. But before we get into the analysis portion of the show, we'll play the promotional material for Fate of the Furious. Stay tuned.
Dominic Toretto just went rogue.
You gonna turn your back on family?
I'm taking you down, Toretto.
Want to play like that?
If you're gonna catch Dom, you're gonna need a little help.
You want to tell me why you just put me in a room with this criminal?
You know, I think that tight t-shirt's cutting up the circulation in your brain. You should get a bigger size.
You guys are gonna work together.
Love to.
Far east side, hit you with the big chain. No class, my posse
Rounds
goes
away.
insane.
Holy!
Yeah,
They just don't give up, do they?
yeah.
Oh, damn!
Fire!
I don't want to go swimming! Ow! I got you, brother.
As per our usual format in attacking a film of this caliber, Lee and I tend to sit down and write our specific approaches, what we gained in terms of knowledge and a little bit of research, what we do after seeing a film such as The Fate of the Furious. And so, if you'll allow me to begin, Lee.
I would love that.
When I was watching Fate of the Furious, the main aspect that really jumped out to me was a family's ability for resilience in adaptation when faced with adversity.
Yes.
So, to me, the ultra-postmodern society has reshuffled what consists of the familial unit and redefined what family actually means. I was reminded of a TED Talks presentation by Seth Godin, who argues that the internet, and more specifically social networks, has given rise to an all-new form of interaction that is akin to tribes, essentially groups of people that flock together based on shared values, interests, passion, regardless of race and gender.
So, like the Familia from the Fast and Furious franchise.
Exactly. Now, there is a growing fear that globalization will lead to the loss of cultural identity and the dissolution of the nuclear family, when in fact that fear points to a growing hypocrisy in the US, given its position on immigration, that even if there is a utopic undertone of a world without race in US discourse, the borders still exist because there is a choice to be made when it comes to what consists of family. In other words, to whom do you owe your allegiance? Blood or tribe? Now, in my opinion, The Fate of the Furious supports the changing familial dynamic and explores how, when faced with adversity, resilience and adaptation are key in establishing stronger familial ties that redefine the classic familial structure. Now, in order to frame my explanation, I read Froma Walsh's book entitled Normal Family Processes.
A classic.
Yes, it absolutely. It was one of the books that I read in order to heal mentally. Chapter 17, which is named Family Resilience, Strengths Forged Through Adversity. And she explains, and I quote, "Beyond seeing individual family members as potential resources for individual resilience, the concept of family resilience focuses on risk and resilience in the family as a functional unit. A basic premise in this systemic view is that serious crises and persistent adversity have an impact on the whole family, and in turn, key family processes mediate the adaptation of all members and their relationships. Key processes in resilience enable the family system to rally in troubled times, to buffer stress, reduce the risk of dysfunction, and support optimal adaptation." Walsh goes on to explain that, quote, "Flexibility, a core process in resilience, involves openness to adaptive change," which she took from Olson and Gorolf in 2003. "The ability to rebound is often thought as bouncing back, like a spring, to a pre-existing shape or norm. However, after most serious crises and transitions, families cannot simply return to quote-unquote normal life as they knew it. To continue, a more apt metaphor might be bouncing forward." She quotes herself in 2002 in another book she wrote, which the title escapes me right now. So this bouncing forward, essentially adapting to meet new challenges and constructing a new normal.
That's fascinating.
Families often need help in navigating uncharted terrain, recalibrating relationships, and reorganizing patterns of interaction to fit new conditions. Last little point I want to take from Walsh. At the same time, family needs to buffer and counterbalance disruptive changes to restore stability, and vulnerable family members need assurance of continuity, dependability, and predictability through turmoil with separations and loss. Now, that being the theoretical framework with which I want to attack a little bit of The Fate of the Furious, two specific moments of resilience and adaptation in the film are the family adapting to Tom Dom. Two specific moments of resilience and adaptation in the film are, first, the family adapting to Dom's departure is the process of recalibrating a relationship and reorganizing patterns of interaction to fit new conditions. Now, Dom is the center of the group. His departure creates an influx that the gang, namely Letty, Roman, Tej, Ramsey, and Hobbs, must overcome. At first, there is a resistance to the recalibration on some of the characters' part. For example, Letty resists, obviously, because she and Dom are recently married and are discussing the potential of having a child. Letty's resistance is reinforced by witnessing Dom's physical interaction with Cypher, Charlize Theron, the villain, in the form of a kiss, to which Letty reacts by saying, "Are you going to turn your back on family?" Which is what we would call an example of her inflexible manner by trying to guilt Dom into coming back to her.
Great.
The same can be said about Hobbs' interaction with Deckard Shaw. Deckard is known for being responsible for Han Lu's death, and also for being the villain in Furious 7. Hobbs' and Deckard's beef is that of the simple cops and robbers dynamic present in many action films. Enter Mr. Nobody, Kurt Russell's character, who sees the bigger picture. The fact that if he can get the protagonists to work with Deckard, who has had dealings with Cypher in the past through his mother, Madeline Shaw, the exquisite Helen Mirren, and his brother Owen Shaw from Fast 6, Mr. Nobody can get the stolen nuclear codes as well as Dom, and therefore reforming the family. Now, if Dom is the quote-unquote good guy turned bad, the only way to restore stability is to navigate what Walsh has labeled uncertain terrain. In other words, the gang must recalibrate their relationship with Deckard Shaw in order for them to adapt to the adversity they are facing. If they reorganize the patterns of interaction to fit new conditions, namely working with individuals that were in opposition to them, the Shaw family, the gang will show resilience and step toward their new normal. The second instance of resilience in Fate of the Furious is Dom's resisting Cypher's attempt to steal his family. As I mentioned a little earlier, Fate of the Furious seeks to redefine the classic familial structure by showing that when faced with adversity, adaptation is needed to form stronger familial ties. In the film, Dom is confronted with a past romance, Elena, who has given birth to a son. In this case, Dom is given a choice. Either kill Cypher, who has put him in this predicament, or defend the mother of his child and his child, and therefore take his place at the center of the classic nuclear family. Because family is what is most important to Dom, he seemingly chooses blood over tribe in this case. However, Dom shows incredible resilience because he is forced to adapt. He also reorganizes patterns of interaction with Deckard Shaw's mother, Madeline Shaw, and with Mr. Nobody, thus inviting the, quote, "is the enemy of my enemy, my friend," saying into this conversation. Now, if I can expand just a little farther on what Seth Godin has labeled tribes, I would say that tribes could also be called adoptive families.
Brilliant.
In which case, Cypher tries to disrupt both Dom's nuclear family and adoptive family, literally robbing him from either, and force her version of family upon him. She kills Elena and tries to replace her by cuddling the baby boy.
That's great. And already we can see parallels with topics we've covered on the show in the past, including the works of Paul Thomas Anderson. The adoptive family, we've this is well-tread ground on Atlantic Screen Connection, so it's great that we can see these threads even being covered by some of the finest of blockbuster media, such as The Fate of the Furious.
Absolutely. Good point. It had escaped me while I was writing this, but I'm glad that you're here to remind me of these things. I'll go back and listen to our older shows. I'm quite a fan. What this brings us, with her cuddling the baby boy, Cypher wants to be the woman at the center of the nuclear family. Notice the emphasis on nuclear here.
Brilliant.
Cypher looking for the codes that would put her at the center of attention.
Genius. This is art.
So because the gang show incredible resilience in retrieving the nuclear codes at the end of the film, that cements Dom at the center of the family, but also constructs the quote-unquote new normal because of the combined effort of the Shaws and Dom's gang to end Cypher's terrorist plan.
Absolutely
So
brilliant.
that was what I took away on my initial viewing of Fate of the Furious.
It's great to see the ideas of the familial being expounded upon in such ways. I mean, and what's great is that in the material, it's all there. It's all there to be read into. Clearly, F. Gary Gray and the writers of this film have taken a lot of time to piece out meticulously the structures with which to draw upon. And I think nothing could be clearer than when you drew the parallel between the nuclear family and the nuclear bomb. That can't be coincidence.
No, it cannot be coincidence. And it's interesting because as we talk about this new normal in the face of adversity, even Dwayne Johnson's character Hobbs is a single father in the film. So we have these very interesting instances of what the new familial concept is. And so this quote-unquote tribe or adoptive family, as I prefer to call it, because tribe is tribe. I think that if we are all going to adopt a new normal, The Fate of the Furious would be one of the communal experiences in which the audience would be able to learn a little bit more on how to restructure, reanalyze, reshuffle, many things to identify and accept. There you have it.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. In fact, it's very much a film that it struck me immediately as a communal experience. So to see that the story both informs community and evokes community,
yes,
is incredible. It's the kind of great writing we've come to expect from this franchise.
It's interesting because even Universal are the producers, and it's in the name.
Brilliant. Yes.
Right? It's not like Sony.
They have a world vision, and clearly they are funding projects that explore that.
Exactly. And just one last quote from Fran Walsh she mentioned in Chapter 17. The well-functioning families approach crises or prolonged adversity as a shared challenge. And I believe that the Fast franchise is a testament to that, even with their relationship with the audience.
Absolutely. I mean, we've...
it's a shared challenge. No one wants to sit there, but they're making fuck tons of money. To me, if we look at just quickly, I want to get into what you have to talk about because it does. Family is the unifying theme of the Fast franchise. I think that with Dom not necessarily being sad at Elena's death shows incredible resilience and him adopting the new ideal of the familial unit and bringing his son and giving it to Letty as her request of being a mother. What better way of...
How modern. How sophisticated.
Exactly. So that's what I picked up on my initial viewing. I want to throw the ball to you, Lee.
Yes. I think what's great is that my piece is more... it's a companion piece to yours in that yours is the we, and mine is the I. Focuses on the singular, yours is the family. But there's an overlap there, and the overlap is Dominic Toretto, and we will discuss him in great detail here.
Excellent.
So here's my hypothesis. Fate of the Furious is an exploration of Freud's theories of the id, ego, and superego. And the battle of the ego...
How modern.
Never debunked. Fate of the Furious is an exploration of Freud's theories of the id, ego, and superego. And the battle of the ego attempting to navigate the multitude of aggressions it receives from both the id and the superego. And we see this through Dominic Toretto's struggle throughout the narrative.
Yeah.
So first I want to divulge a little on Freud and his theories. The id, the ego, and the superego are three parts of the psychic apparatus, a structural model of the psyche, firmly theoretical and ever-changing, and certainly not tied directly to neurological understanding. Very much formed a groundwork to our understanding of neurological patterns in today's modern world. So this is all very relevant.
I can see where you're going with this. This is fascinating.
So these three parts can be summarized as such. We have the id, our instinctual desires. Uncontrolled and undirected, often contradictory and base. We have this part of our brain first, the part before we absorb conscious information, and so it's connected to the infantile state of demands for the immediate. It is all bias and instinct. Then we have the superego. This is our moral conscience, our aspirations, and the structure that binds us to our way of thinking. Inherited and developed through the image of our parents, as we grow up with them, and with those who teach us. It essentially defines the limits and aspirations of our mind based on conceptions and beliefs espoused on us by exposure to our guiding forces. Finally, there's the ego. The ego...
This is true American spirit.
Finally, there's the ego. This is our conscious mitigator.
Yep.
Our sense of reality. Driven by external forces, like our surroundings, where we live and the rules of reality as we come to perceive them, it seeks to find the middle ground between pleasing the id's constant impulses and obeying the superego's drive, lest we be chastised or punished with complex responses such as guilt and shame.
Mm-hmm.
The ego is our rationale, and its many defense mechanisms emerge in forms like denial, intellectualism, fantasy, regression, dissociation, idealization. It goes on.
It is an extensive list.
I really want to tie this into the Fate of the Furious. And as aforementioned, I want to look at Dominic Toretto and his role as the ego. Dominic Dom Toretto is the uniting balance of the Fast and the Furious universe. The head of the Familia, we see him in Havana at the start of the movie as the idealized version of man, a leader in his community, dignified and deified, a great family man to his cousin, a role model to his peers, a caring lover to his wife. And through a street race, we see his ability to navigate not just the streets of Havana, to uphold these strengths, and we don't see them just as physical shows and feats, but as metaphors for his navigation of the labyrinth of pressures both external, as in the motorbikes that come into his path, and the traffic that he dodges, and even the forked roads that he chooses and navigates with ease. And the pressures internal, exploding engine, nose gas, terrible car, all of which he navigates with incredible foresight and expertise, upholding his role as ego. But what happens when we challenge the ego? That is the core structure of the film. We see the plot deteriorate once Dom's ego has been questioned. What would he be like as a father? Asks Letty. Here Letty plays the role of the id, forming the demand of his personal, chaotic, impulsive mind. Shouldn't he reproduce? Mm-hmm. Shouldn't he be a father? And this draws the superego into the equation. It's his moral obligation, his duty. All higher concepts of his family role challenge him now to uphold that position. And this pressure forms an anxiety within Dom that manifests itself as Cypher, the representation of the superego's demands and pressures. For the remainder of the plot, we see the struggle of Dom the ego as he attempts to mitigate the demand of his id and his superego in order to please both parties and return peace of mind to himself. Let's look at the external factors that surround him. For his id, we have the cars, the stereotypes, murder, nuclear power, love, and think of the spectacle. The wrecking ball that forms the division of his family, nothing more than a physical force, base and obtuse. His desires for children literally divide the family, and we see this in the form of the wrecking ball.
Miley Cyrus talks about a wrecking ball in one of her songs.
Yes, and we all know how base that is. A city overrun by self-driving autonomous cars. This is all the mounting pressure his id is putting on him to seek sheer pleasure. And it's here at his worst that we see him in the true personification of the id, as a gimp mask-wearing chainsaw guy.
Gimp chainsaw? Do you think that the mask that Dominic wears is a metaphor for the true nature of his plan? Is he masking his true nature based on what you're saying?
I'm saying, I think it's more that the mask represents the total conformity of his personality to the id, but it's not really him. He's the ego. So when he dons the gimp mask, he truly dons the persona
right.
of the id.
Yes, the id.
And therefore,
so it goes down to what we'd say in the fetish parlance, he would be a dominatrix of sort. So could we call him Dominatrix Toretto?
Oh, damn it. Meanwhile, his superego demands his family strain, his obligation to let them know, his duty to be a good father by rescuing his son from Cypher, his marriage that is being torn apart by the pressure of his ex-lover's unintended pregnancy, his faith as questioned by his hanging up of the cross, his moral obligation to his family and community as enforced by Luke Hobbs, who actively plans to kill him if he does not adhere to his duty.
Yeah.
And Cypher, who controls all of these pressures. We see his low point here with constant immobilization, watching his lover die, watching his child behind glass, listening to Cypher's plan, and even caught between the grappling hooks of the family. He's being torn apart by these pressures to uphold his own ideals of self-actualization. What's our resolve? Well, between the two forces, there is only one force he can still rely on. Reality. Unchecked by either id or superego.
Yes.
The external forces that lie beyond his behest in the real world, that he can use to inform and tame the draw of the other two.
Behest, yes.
So he contacts Magdalene Shaw, who controls the two factors that are least in Dom's control, the Shaw brothers. By mastering their support, he frees his son and thereby frees himself from the control of Cypher. Then, to show his control over his id, he gains control of his car again and uses it to dodge heat-seeker missiles, thus reuniting with his family. His son returned and his family reunited. Dom circumnavigates the pressures of the superego and id to restore balance to his sanity and alleviate the pressures that surround him. So, essentially what F. Gary Gray has done here is create a critical fiction that attempts to repurpose some of Freud's most prominent workings and theories about the factors that affect the development of a personality by distilling these elements to their most base. By focusing on a character with absolutely no personality whatsoever, as we do with Dom Toretto, we can see ego and the pressures. I got so far with that.
It's such a slap in the face. It has no personality.
With absolutely no personality whatsoever, as we do with Dom Toretto, we can see ego and the pressures of the id and superego all the clearer. By bringing this to a modern Fast and the Furious audience, F. Gary Gray is attempting to expand beyond the simple heist narrative of the later Fast and Furious films into a new area of psychic interpretation, psychoanalytical education, and metaphorical intentions, and thus unite the popcorn movie crowd at long last with those craving the next big highbrow action movie. I think that speaks for itself.
I think you summed it up quite well. And even if I can elaborate a little on what you said, the choice of costumes really speaks to that metamorphosis between the id, the ego, and the superego, with Dominic Toretto wearing a white wife beater. What do they call those things?
No, that's what they're called. They're called wife beaters.
No, but there's probably a proper name for it.
I don't know. Fest?
It's because I can't say it with a straight face. And I think F. Gary Gray does a good job in showing Dominic Toretto's evolution through the use of costumes, the wardrobe department.
Right.
At the beginning of the film, when you mentioned, Cuba, he's wearing a white wife beater, and when Dominic shifts towards the dark side of Freud's
Of the id.
dark side of the id, he's wearing all black to show just how impenetrable. Well, there you have it.
I think the conclusion there is self-foregone.
Yeah. And I mean, I really appreciated that take on it. And I wanted to just add a little something to the aspect of what you were talking about, Freud, but also bringing it back to the resilience I was talking about at the beginning.
Yes,
because
do.
The way the resilience is set up goes hand in hand with the car sequence that you were talking about at the beginning, his navigating.
Absolutely.
And,
yes.
They're in Cuba on their honeymoon, Dom and Letty. And I think that in order to set up his motifs, director F. Gary Gray uses specific camera angles in order to really cement the motifs he wants to put forth. If we look at how the director, F. Gary Gray, intercuts Dom and Letty's stroll with establishing shots that heighten the communal aspect of the Cuban lifestyle, with medium shots of men and women dancing near recently polished cars. And again,
Yes.
re-emphasizing the aspect of community by also incorporating the cars as symbolic of familial transportation.
Brilliant.
He also then moves to close-up shots of women's backsides,
Yeah, posteriors.
also seemingly recently polished, that lure the viewer in for a much closer reading of the film that we have just kind of broken down.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree harder.
So this is the first portion of the show. Do you have anything else to add to this portion? Because we'll take a quick break and we would come back to just finish up the episode.
No, I feel that that was a lot of information to divulge on our audience, and that we should perhaps give them a chance to collect themselves before coming back with more mind-blowing Fast and the Furious information.
Excellent. So stay tuned. We will be back after this quick break.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, Sheila.
We are tonight's entertainment.
Sound good?
I know who I am!
Did IQs just drop shot while I was away?
I have a plan. I like this shit.
You know, it's exciting.
Dance off, bro.
It is your
Me and you.
Welcome to the Atlantic Screen Connection podcast.
Let the games begin.
So welcome back. We hope that you
Yeah.
guys enjoyed the so-called, what we're going to call this, Lee, the intellectual portion of our Fate of the Furious.
Yes, of course. Intellectual, that's what it was.
Well, I mean, the reasoning behind that was we know how dumb these movies are, and when I pitched this to you, I think, didn't I?
Yes.
And I figured that because I just wanted to have a good time. I didn't really want to rack my brain.
Yeah, nobody wants to beat themselves up fucking really actually studying Fast and the Furious, or even going the other way and just like reviewing it for an hour. It would kill us, man.
Exactly. I mean, the fate of the Fast franchise has its diehard fans. And what would it be for us to just start shitting on a movie because it doesn't make any sense of plot contrivances? And yeah, all of those movies are like that. we wanted to have a good time, push ourselves to kind of go out and do research on specific things so that we could come in and with a fresh perspective, rather than just looking at the film, we could actually look at what the film is trying to do in the context of the world we're living in there right now.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I'll be honest, I had a blast doing this. This is fucking
I had
hilarious to me.
so much fun. I actually had, it was a material I was kind of researching on my own just to think of what I could use it with maybe in the future. Was that I read this article. They're doing studies about racial bias and how they're finding it.
I read that too.
It's like implicit in the mind. Mm-hmm. And I had this whole stuff prepared for Psychology Today quotes from a guy called Bernard J. Luskin, and it was going to be talking about the amygdala as the emotional center of the brain and how fear and bias react quicker than your logical impulses from your frontal cortex. Yeah, and so I wanted to try and work that in. I've been trying to think of something to work that in for ages because I found it like super interesting as a read, but nothing's really come up, and it didn't have enough meat in itself, so I just went further back and did Freud instead.
The same thing for me. That what I initially had started reading was Mary Beltran's Fast and Bilingual. It's Fast and the Furious and the Latinization of Racelessness.
Oh my god, that's right. You had like 30 odd theses written by people about like how intellectual the Fast and the Furious films could be read as. That was incredible.
Exactly, and how Hollywood basically is saying that the racelessness in the Fast and the Furious is purely aesthetic. There's no real purpose for them to be doing that, and how the whole marketing aspect of the Fast and Furious is to cater to a Latino audience. But
Sure.
I started steering away from that because being a white guy talking about that stuff would have been a little bit of a touchy subject in my opinion. So I decided to go with
depends how it's handled, but I mean, you kind of have to know your shit.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm not really well versed in nor am I in the family dynamic. It's just that it felt a lot easier for me to kind of play with family, because family is the general main, that's all they fucking say.
Yeah. To be fair, in this film, they toned it back. In the last film, they said it every fucking half sentence, but this one, it was like 6 or 7 times.
Oh, yeah, but it's on screen. The Rock is a coach. They're bringing in the mother for the Shaw brothers. And now, like, Dominic has to choose between his racing family and his real family, in a sense. It's just all over the place.
You're reading into it. That was our first mistake, was trying to read into it.
Yeah, but overall, I mean, if I'm being honest, I had a great time watching this fucking piece of shit.
No, absolutely. It's wonderful to just go out and switch your brain off for almost 2.5 hours, though. I mean,
but was it really off? Mine wasn't off at all, man. I was taking it in, laughing, and I mean, I think we were 10 at my showing, and I went with my friend Juan. The stuff that I posted on Instagram. It was so fucking hilarious, and walking out of the theater, the first thing he says to me, and I wish I would have captured this on video, he says to me, "Jesus fucking Christ, man, I feel like going to the gym and start stealing cars." I was like, is that the message? Is that the message?
Absolutely. Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, like, my brain's always on at first, but there's a point where when I'm trying to make something of nothing, then my brain trips over itself, and then I fall into that sort of comatose form.
I know exactly.
Where I was just absorbing information.
Well, I see. To me, there is a definite point in the film where that actually started to happen, and it's the raining cars sequence where the cars just come. I feel like they're just trying to hammer you over the head. Stop thinking. Stop thinking. Bang, 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 bang.
It worked. I switched off entirely.
Exactly. I was
just
pummeled
started
by
laughing,
noise.
enjoying myself.
Exactly. I was just laughing my ass off. Juan was next to me, just punching the shit out of me. Check, that's fucking insane. Goddamn. But but I'm gonna rewatch this. I had so much fun.
Oh, absolutely. That's the thing. Like, it's I want to see it outside of cinema. I've made the mistake the first time with Fast and Furious 7 was the first one I'd seen, and this is the second one. I went back after the last one because it was that good. So right. I thought, so I really enjoyed that in cinemas. But the second time I realized that it's really not for cinema. Like, the spectacle is kind of blurry as it is. So you're never really seeing stuff on the big screen like you're supposed to see it. But the whole point is that it's funny. It's fucking hilarious. And what you want to do is get a group of friends with a similar sense of humor and ease the night into a long night of watching Fast and the Furious films. Because then then you get to joke about it without being reprimanded by the guy next to you or something like that, you know? I felt uncomfortable because I wanted to laugh my ass off, but maybe this is the thing with UK cinemas, but they're very quiet. Nobody really reacts that often, not even to comedies. Sometimes you'll get really lively audiences. It just doesn't happen here, so you feel uncomfortable emoting in any way. And me and my brother, who I went to see it with, we were just fucking busting up the entire time. And we had to, like, tone it down the entire... and we were, like, whispering jokes to each other as we were watching it. And, like, I shouldn't have had to do that. I should have just been at home and had it on TV. And when you're there and you're not allowed to laugh, you realize that huge stretches of the film, nothing is happening, and it's actually incredibly dull. So... so
absolutely.
like, whereas when you're in a more comfortable location and you're drinking and you could just chat over the film anyway, you don't have to worry about the fact that the film's half boring. So I totally recommend it, but I recommend seeing it in your own leisure, in the most comfortable position you could be in.
I disagree.
What?
Maybe on your side of the ocean, but I was fucking guffawing as a crazy maniac in the audience with Juan next to me, and we were talking the entire fucking time. There was a guy that bought a D-box seat in back of us, and we went up next to the rows for the D-box people so that we could feel the vibrations without paying for it. Cheap bastard I am sometimes. I didn't want to pay full price. I actually wanted to go see it at IMAX, but we couldn't help but laugh. You know, it was just so fucking funny the entire time.
Absolutely.
But continue what you had to say, and then I want to get into just overall performances, best sequences in the movie, worst aspects of the movie, and then we can close this out. They've had enough already of us.
I'll just say that I think that what's clear from like the Americas audiences and the UK audiences is that the fact that in the Americas and Canada it's called Fate of the Furious, it's not even called that here. This and it's very reflective of our sense of humor. It's literally just called Fast and the Furious 8. How fucking it's the worst title. It's so dull and it shows that we don't even have a sense of humor about it. Fate of the Furious, F8 of the Furious. That is fucking hilarious. I love it, and we can't even call it that here because that's not what it's called.
Really?
Yeah,
oh, that's amazing. I'm just looking up right now the Japanese title because they have the best. Japan always has the best titles for these fucking movies.
Yeah.
In Japan, the English title is Wild Speed Icebreak.
Wow.
And that
is possibly the coolest collection of words they could possibly put together.
Wild Speed Icebreak.
Wild Speed Icebreak. Nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It'd be so cool, man. We should.
Who wouldn't get hyped up for that? I mean,
exactly. It's High Speed Icebreak. I think the other one was Wild Speed Sky Mission.
That is it. That's the seventh one. Oh my god! I was trying to think of it. It is brilliant.
What was your favorite moment of the film, and what was the shittiest aspect of the movie, according to you?
God, I have so many favorite parts. I mean, like you go for the Rock punching the torpedo. I mean,
that was amazing.
That's incredible. It's like fan fiction. They made it real.
It's weird because they thought of that. That's the funny. Hey, maybe we should get the Rock to punch a missile.
Exactly. That's how you know that this is like probably the most fun series to work on in Hollywood right now. Because you're the guy who gets to be in the pitch room and say, the Rock should punch a torpedo into Russian separatists. And they go, love it. You're the guy with the ideas around here, John.
Exactly. And he's got that rubber stamp that says okay, and he just goes around stamping shit on it. Okay, bang.
Yeah, I don't know. What I think my favorite line was actually 3 lines in a row. Right. And they were Michelle Rodriguez.
Right.
She says 3 lines and they're so badly delivered and so terrible. I can't even remember them. One of them is like, that bitch is crazy. It's awful. And then she says 2 more like, watch out. I was in tears. I was like, this is incredible. She's really not even remotely trying.
Oh, man.
I feel like the worst part about the film that I didn't enjoy was Charlize Theron. I liked what she was trying to go for, but the film didn't give her anything funny to do. You know, it was just be cool. But even, you know, like in the last one, Jason Statham, he had piles of hilarious moments that were also badass. She didn't have any of that. She was just like, you know, creepy woman character hiding around in the shadows. It wasn't...
She was channeling Hannibal Lecter, man. She didn't blink throughout the entire film.
Oh,
she was this close to saying that, like, I ate your baby's liver with a Chianti and baba bean. It's just like, she's so close to telling Dominic that, man. It was fucking hilarious.
Oh, I remember my favorite sequence. It's Jason Statham with the baby. Absolutely. 10 out of 10.
That was beautiful. You're absolutely right.
It was the spin-off from the Fast and Furious series that I wanted to see.
Yeah.
They had just a concept. They wanted to make a whole film out of it, but they wanted to make a pilot of it, and they put it in this film.
Yeah.
Jason Statham, baby assassin guy. It was amazing. I laughed the entire time. Every pun, every move, the way they choreographed it, it was incredible.
But that's the funny thing, and that scene's actually taken from Hard Boiled. It's a John Woo film. And
seriously?
It's a hospital scene where I remember sitting through it and going, I've seen this. Anyway, that entire sequence was so cool.
Yeah.
I really thought that was brilliant.
Excellent.
And Jason Statham breaking the fourth wall, talking to the baby, but at the same time talking to the audience. I think I'll go through the shit that I didn't like first.
Sure.
I don't want Scott Eastwood to be in anything anymore.
He was not good in this.
He's never good. Even like in Suicide Squad, you're like, you stick out like a sore thumb. Fuck off. You know, he's just there and he's distracting. He's annoying.
I forgot he was in Suicide Squad. That's how bad that was.
He's really a bad actor. I mean, I don't like seeing him around. I don't care.
He had the opportunity here to sort of dethrone that perception of him as a guy who can't act, but his comedic timing wasn't even really much either.
No.
And that was that's kind of the final straw, really. He really had that opportunity, and he made really little of it.
Yeah, and he's not even charming. He looks good. I'll give him that. He looks good. But he should look good and shut up. That's all he should do now. Acting in this for him is terrible, 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 terrible. And it's not just because, I mean, you'll have good actors that will make really, really interesting things with bad lines. He can't even do it. He's reading them seriously, and you're like, come on, man. You know this is not supposed to be taken seriously.
Absolutely.
And Vin Diesel, I don't get it anymore. I've never seen a guy grunt. Well, it's 'cause I liked him in Riddick. You know, I used to like it. I mean, I'm one of the only guys out there that actually was like, Chronicles of Riddick was a really good film. I liked that film a lot. I don't like the cliffhanger because I never got the end of that fucking story, but I would have loved to see that. And I appreciated him in Pitch Black, you know, because I was like, okay, that's what he could do. But in this, he just grunts his way. He looks like he's on Vicodin the entire time. He's just half asleep. Every time he says like, family. All he does to look menacing is look like lean forward, lift his eyes up, and you see that he's struggling to keep the eyelids from just flapping down and falling asleep. It's very
to
weird.
be fair, in this film, he did his best to spike on the emotional range by shouting a little. This time he was angry, so he yelled a little, and that was really him pushing the limits of what he can do.
But I mean, I see Vin Diesel as a giant robot or a fucking thick tree.
It works in these films anyway. It's kind of part of the spectacle. He's just, when you dilute all the factors that make a good action film, including your charismatic, attractive lead, and you take a step back for every Fast and the Furious attempt at doing those.
Right.
Vin Diesel's really pretty much exactly what you imagine as a monotone, capable actor who's not exactly particularly interesting as an actor or an emoter. So, it fits. He's never seemed out of place to me.
No, I mean, it's just like, I hadn't seen him in years, so I didn't give a shit. You know, Vin Diesel's not a draw for me. I don't care. Every time I see him, I'm like, oh God, here we go, caveman. And plus, I mean, The Rock has got such charisma as well. I mean, I can understand why Universal Pictures have decided to greenlight a Jason Statham, Dwayne Johnson spin-off movie. That's going to be great. I mean, why wouldn't you want to see this? Like, because to me, the most impressive scene and the most fun scene in the movie is the Jason Statham treating the prison like a fucking parkour course.
That was so well done. You know, like, it was just sheer fun to watch.
Yeah, I could have done without the shaky cam. I mean, we've been spoiled with John Wick style, like, filmmaking. With where, like, you put the camera down and you let the actors do it. Now you got quick cuts, and every time you see Statham, you're like, oh, why am I seeing the back of the head? Oh, there's the stunt. Fun sequence. I liked how it played down. The Rock just lifting the fucking concrete bench.
Oh,
that was so cool. So I don't know, man. I'm glad that I headed into this with the right mindset. This is the fate of the Furious. I don't have to come in here and be ready to hate this, look at characterization, look at how formulaic it was or anything like that.
Look at the title. It's called Fate of the Furious. It's wonderful.
Exactly. And so, I mean, I genuinely wish I would have seen it in IMAX. Just so that my brain could have been hit with how stupid and dumb this movie is. And had just go with it. I wish I would have bought a bigger bag of popcorn. That's how I feel about it.
That's a good way to summarize it, really.
So anyway, shall we close this out, sir?
Let's do it, man.
All right. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in to the Atlantic Screen Connection podcast. I want to give everyone who's been supporting the show in the last month or so, it's been intense. It's been really cool.
Bizarre, man.
The Under the Skin episode has surpassed all of our expectations in terms of listening, with retweeting as well. So many people have said so many nice things about that episode, and we want to thank all of you out there for kind of giving us that feedback. It's so cool.
Yeah, they really embraced it, and it's great because it's the stuff that we really intend to do more of with the show. It's like it's exactly what the kind of stuff we enjoy doing the most is really digging into films. So it's great that when we set aside time to really do it properly, like we did with Under the Skin, that people really got on board with it. That's so gratifying to hear.
Yeah. So I mean, many thanks go out to Vince Leo. Thank you so much for your nice comments. Also to Tim Costa, Walter Vinci, David Hart, Sarah Bent. Again, big shout out to her because these people tweeted the show and they gave us so many nice compliments on what was in there. It was great feedback to hear. Even JD Duran reached out to me personally and commented on it, and he really enjoyed the show as well. So, and thank you guys so much. I really
I mean, even on top of that, we introduced the next show, and people have been really coming back for that and been really interacting with it and really embrace the sort of lighter format, even as we try to figure that out.
We're trying to figure it out,
yeah. So I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that we're throwing a lot of things that people might not really want to take part in, but people they're giving us great feedback on it, and they're very complimentary. So it's a weird time.
And I also want to shout out to Sheila, obviously. Thank you so much. I interacted. And Emerald Williams, again, it was really fun to interact with them online this week. I know I'm forgetting someone. I'm sorry if I forgot who you are. Shout out to you, the person that I forgot.
That's
Shout
you.
out to you. So all of you that I forgot to mention on this episode, this is all you. Thank you so much to you. So Lee, where can we find you, sir?
Not the you that we were referring to, the me. So you can find me at bigpicturereviews.co.uk. Oh, we didn't win our award.
No.
Oh, what a shock.
Did you see their Twitter account? They've got like 125,000.
Jesus, I know. Yeah, no, we were not in.
We're like
in the running.
we're a couple of thousand shy, but we're close.
We got a shout out and all from the award ceremony. Again, I couldn't make it because of money, but it was great just to be involved, even if I never really took it seriously. But it was just great. So, yeah. On top of that, you can reach me at BigPicReviews on Twitter. You can say hi. I'll say hi back. How did you find Freud's understanding of Fate the Furious? You let me know. Jason?
Cool. My name is Jason Michael. You can find me on Twitter at AtlanticSC. You can also find us on Facebook. Go to the Atlantic Screen Connection Podcast Facebook page. Leave us a review. There's a couple of people that gave us a review over there. It's really cool. Like the page, share the page. If ever you guys are into movies, if you have any suggestions you want us for movies that we might want to cover. So yeah, we love interacting with you guys. You guys can find us also on Google Play, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio. We're also on apparently Podcast Addict. Overcast is another place you can find us. That's it. Leave reviews on all those sites or the preferred site of that you like to go to. And so that's it. I hope that you guys liked our weird little take on Fate of the Furious. We hope it wasn't a waste of time for you. There's actually good material in there for an analysis of Fate of the Furious.
If you want to take it actually serious for your college thesis or something, you can absolutely take our material. We don't give a shit.
So that's it for us on the most pretentious podcast you will hear about Fate of the Furious. Be sure to tune in to next week's episode or the week after's episode of AtlanticSC Next. And that's it. So be sure to check out the other shows, Under the Skin and also at Next with Colin Llewellyn. Big shout out to him. That's it for us this week.
That's it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.